So that was my theme music that I'm going to be using at the beginning of all my videos, at least for a while. And when I decided to create this, the concept was to use as many of my instruments that I have as possible in a very short amount of time, like 20 seconds or so. I have so much stuff on my computer, especially software, probably because of all the classes that I've been teaching over the last 10 plus years at colleges and recordings I've produced for different people. I've had to collect all kinds of things. This is way too much on my computer. I haven't even used half of it probably at this point. So one of the things I'm trying to do with this project is to get familiar with at least most of the things that I have. So I've used a bunch of different things. You can see on the music here, there's an indication of what instruments are being used at a given time. On the left of the music, you can see there's this box with a whole bunch of letters in it. So this is a 12-tone matrix. I don't always do this, but for some reason I decided to use this particular system for this piece. It's another thing I'm going to be trying to discuss and use a lot of different techniques. And I have all these books that I'm going to be trying to make use of. There's a lot of stuff in the books that I have that I've never tried. So hopefully I'll get to include some of that in some of these upcoming projects that I'm working on. But I've done quite a bit of music with 12-tone, and I should mention that this approach goes back a long time. It's associated with Arnold Schoenberg, who lived from 1874 to 1951, and coincidentally, I studied with a composer in the 1990s, Angelo Mussolino, in Long Island, and his teacher was Joseph Schmid, who was a student of Alban Berg, who was a student of Arnold Schoenberg. And Mussolino was a proponent of a lot of Schoenberg's books, so I bought most of them, if not all of them, and did most of the exercises in the harmony book and the counterpoint book and the composition book and so on. And it was really helpful in getting things going in the 90s. This was after I already graduated from college and I wanted to study composition. I mentioned the 12-tone technique that I used. The 12-tone technique is composing with a matrix of tone rows using all 12 notes of the chromatic scale transformed by transposition, inversion, retrograde, and retrograde inversion. And I'm going to go over that. I also happen to use something called Klangfarben melody, or tone color melody. This is dividing up the melody between different instruments and or combinations of instruments. So when I set out to do this, I knew I wanted to use a lot of different instruments and to go quickly from one to the next, and I wasn't even thinking of Schoenberg and this term Klangfarben melody, but coincidentally, that's where it comes from. It goes back a very long time, probably 100 years. So that's what's going on in this music. Let's take a look. So in order to use a matrix, first thing you got to do is make up the prime row. That's this P0 here. When I write with 12-tone, I don't always try to sound too out there or too atonal, although sometimes I do that depending on the purpose. I know for some film music I had to do some pretty scary sounding things or uncomfortable episodes. This helps you get there. But sometimes I like to use more familiar kinds of things inside the rows to make the music seem not so crazy. You can see the first 5 notes here, C, B flat, G, F, E flat. These are the notes in an E flat pentatonic scale descending. And that's a very common sound that everybody uses in all kinds of music. And you can see in the score here, I start off with the prime row, and there are the notes C, B flat, G, F, E flat. And then there's this chord. This chord is made up of the next several notes, C sharp, F sharp, E, A, G sharp. This is an F sharp minor 9 chord. So then I have 2 notes left, D and B, and then the beginning of this soprano saxophone part start with D and B. So I use up the whole P0, and the idea is when you have this row, you can create all kinds of other rows that are related to it by transposing them, making them go backwards, and inverting them. That's what I mentioned earlier. So here's the original, and when it goes backward, it's called retrograde. Instead of starting from C, B flat, G, F, and so forth, you start on the other end and you go B, D, G sharp, A, and you use that as a scale to work with. If I were to invert the intervals, so instead of going C, B flat, G, so that's C, B flat, that's down a major second interval or a whole step, and then from B flat down to G is down a minor third. If I inverted it, instead of going down a whole step, I go up. That's this one. C to D, and B flat down to G. Instead of going down a minor third from D, I can go up a minor third. So it's just the opposite direction. So that's why it says I, it's inversion. So P0 goes this way, retrograde is backward, going that way, and then inversion is going that way. And of course, you can make the inversion go backwards, and that's the retrograde inversion, so it goes up. And then when you do that, you get this box with all of these scales. And this helps me create the notes. I don't have to think too much about what notes to use because it's already kind of decided for the most part. So I have this descending pentatonic scale that the fretless bass played, and then I have the synthesizer chord here, F sharp minor 9, and then I almost ran out of notes. I have a D and B left, so I started the sax line with it. And this is how I use this approach here. So I had a D and a B, and then what? In my head, I said I'm hearing an A next. There's 4 options. I could use I9 going down. See, it starts with an A. I could use P9 going left to right. I could use retrograde inversion 8, RI8, going up. Or I could use R10 from right to left. I knew I wanted to start with an A, and I just looked at all my 4 choices, and I decided, all right, I liked retrograde 10. A, C, F sharp, G, D, E, and so forth. And here they are. I played the A and the C from R10, retrograde 10 here, to finish the soprano sax phrase here, those 4 notes. And then Monarch, which is a reactor synthesizer, it played these 5 notes. And here they are, F sharp, G, D, E, B. And then it keeps going, C sharp, E flat, F, G flat, B flat. I used all flats in the music to make it be a D flat pentatonic scale. And that's it for the entire R10. And then after that, I guess I must have heard a C sharp of some kind to continue. I guess I started on a D flat here and I wanted to end on one. So C sharp is the same thing as D flat. So that's probably why I heard that. And then I have 4 choices. I1, R2, P1, or RI0. So I went with R2 and then same kind of stuff. So I used those notes. You can either use them as single note melodies or as chords. The rule is that everything has to happen in order. Now, of course, if you wanted to try this technique, you don't have to be so rigid about it like I am. You could just use this to get something going, and then if you feel like you want to add some different notes in there and violate the rule, that's okay, it's your music. Or if you don't want to be so strict about it, you could repeat notes or whatever you want to do. But I like being very meticulous about being inside this box, locking myself into it. If you look at all the notes that I used, it's all right out of this matrix. So I could go through the whole thing, but I think you get the idea. I should mention, though, that some of the choices that I made were very intuitive, but now that I'm looking at them, I could see that there was some kind of reasoning, at least subconsciously, that I was coming up with these choices. So once again, I've got this pentatonic going down, I've got a minor 9 chord. So in order to relate to this kind of 5-note descending thing, it looks like with the soprano sax, I start descending, and then I change the direction. So instead of going completely all the way down, it starts going down, but then it goes up, breaks up the flow, and then it continues all the way down. So it's a descending line, but I suddenly go up. So this is just variation. I don't see a lot of repetition in this music. And that's one of the things I like to do. I like to somehow make use of the original idea, but then vary it in some way. So here I am on my way down, but then I go up. And when it goes up, this monarch phrase also goes up, and then it goes up again. And this going up thing seems to be like the development of the new idea here. I introduce the going up, and then I keep it going a few more times, and then I end the phrase. The electric guitar does a pentatonic scale going up. That's just the opposite of what the fretless bass did. It went down. The viola, and by the way, that was my daughter Maya playing the 2 notes here. The viola, it starts on the same note the guitar did, but then it does an E, which is kind of an out note. It's like major and minor at the same time. And then I have another minor 9 chord here, just like this one. This is an F sharp minor 9. This is a G sharp minor 9. It's voiced differently, and it only has 4 notes instead of 5, but it's the same kind of harmony again. And then I decided to kind of end the phrase here, and I just landed on a chord for 2 beats. This is an A minor 11, not unrelated to a minor 9 chord. Instead of the 9, there's an 11. With the new phrase here, once again, I've got descending material here. It looks like the descending B flat pentatonic scale, but I don't hit a B flat. The B flat is up here. It's called an A sharp. So instead of landing on a low B flat like I did with the fretless bass, the electric bass only played 4 notes, and I tried to do something different, put the B flat up here, but I called it an A sharp. It descends down only a little bit, and then here's a minor 9 chord again, broken up. It's a C sharp minor 9. The C sharp starts here, and then the rest of the chord happens here. So the root of the chord was with OBXD and the ES2 synthesizers combined, and then the rest of the chord went to Prism and Alchemy. So you can see I'm using the same kind of stuff from earlier, but varying it in some way. And then there's these 2 low notes. This was hysterical. This was my son Noah playing bass trombone. Originally, I was going to use an upright bass sample from Spectrasonic's Trillion, which I did not end up using in this music. That was my original idea. But then the morning of recording the video, I asked my kids if they wanted to play 2 notes on this, and they both wanted to do it. So they played their 2 notes, and I love Noah on these 2 notes. Funny. Okay, here we go. Continuing. Looks like more like variations of pentatonic kind of sounds here. This is an F pentatonic up to the A, but it's kind of rotated. Instead of starting on F, it starts on C. So more variations, and it's going up instead of down. And then we've got another chord here. Instead of a minor 9 chord this time, it's a major 9 chord that's inverted. So it's similar kind of chord, but instead of minor, it's major. It's E major 9. E, G sharp. B is over here. That's why I didn't include that in the pentatonic scale I mentioned here. It's actually part of the chord, but it kind of anticipates it. So E, G sharp, B, D sharp, F sharp. That's an E major 9 chord, and it's inverted. The G sharp are the thirds in the bass. Here's another chord here. This is a D flat 6-9 chord. So new kind of chord. And then we have another descending line here. And then another chord, a B minor 7 inverted with the 7 in the bass. So now I'm trying to get out of the same stuff that I've been doing, this kind of ascending, leapy thing, and then another descending line. Another chord, what is this chord? This is a D flat major 13, and then an F sharp minor 11. 2 notes on the recorder. This is kind of like what the bass trombone did, a minor third interval going down. Here it is really high, minor third interval going down. And then another chord here. This is a E flat major 9, which that kind of sound was used a bunch of times. And then finally at the end, this was really interesting. I didn't really realize this until after I listened to it. It sounds like a 5-1 cadence. Even though this is not tonal music, it's considered post-tonal music. But if you listen to it, it sounds like I'm going E7-ish to A major. And there's no A here, but it kind of implies the sound of an A major with a 2 in it. See, B, C sharp, E is an A with a 2, but there's no A. So it's an implied A. And this sounds very much E or E7-ish, even though there's no E and there's no D as the 7, but it has a G sharp. It seems like a cadence that goes 5-1, but in a somewhat altered way. If you listen to it, you can hear it has that sort of resolution at the end. So that's this piece. Hopefully this all made sense. Even though I was just kind of using this matrix and trying to figure out what notes I was hearing, and I did it really fast. What's nice about using this matrix is because you're using the same scale over and over again, even though it's varied with inversion and retrograde inversion, you end up having the same kind of things happen. That's why it makes it all kind of related with the pentatonic, the major 9 and the minor 9 chords, and other things. So there's sort of a unity to it somehow, even though it's all very different and varied and may not sound like it's always related, but to me, I could see that things all kind of go back to the same ideas. So that's the integration theme, an unusual fusion of jazz, rock, electronic music, and 20th century classical music.